I acknowledge their deep connection to land, water and culture, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. A little about me before we get stuck into everything. So I'm Declan Collins and I'm the IS Project Manager for Western Australia. I joined ISCA in March 2020, and prior to that I've had a variety of project management roles both in the private and public sector, on both the client side and in external project management consulting roles, and have been predominantly in land and infrastructure planning and delivery. So the sustainability realm is relatively new to myself from an ISCA perspective, but had previous experience through Green Star, through land development roles. First off, this is just a bit of an overview of what I'll cover today. I'll start by doing the sales pitch, the benefits of sustainability assurance. I'll then give a high-level overview of ISCA and a bit of a snapshot of the infrastructure pipeline. I'll go into some key components of the IS rating tool, and then just delve into a couple of case studies which try to, again, sell some of the benefits for our rating scheme. I do have a couple of sections where I can pause for questions, but if there is anything that people want to stop me on, please just feel free to speak up as I'm going. So the sales pitch, benefits of sustainability assurance and the use of rating tools. So first of all, what is infrastructure sustainability? And very simply, it's just infrastructure that is planned, designed, constructed and operated to optimise environmental, social and economic outcomes over the long term. And why use rating tools? Our technical manager, Dr. Kerry Griffiths, completed a PhD on the application of sustainability assurance and rating schemes. And really some of the key takeouts on why use rating tools, the overwhelming response, predominantly from the contractor and consulting space, was reputational recognition and PR. It allows you to be recognised, it can improve your reputation, and most significantly, it can provide a real competitive advantage during procurement, and that's particularly relevant to the public sector and infrastructure delivery space. It drives sustainability outcomes, so it allows you to get a clearer vision of both the outcomes that you can achieve and also the realisation of those initiatives. So whether that's reductions in construction and operational resources or materials, energy, water, building supply chain capacity, climate change resilience, or really anything else. The IS rating tool just helps you identify and track both the tangible as well as some of those less tangible sustainable outcomes. It's comprehensive and it's systematic. So it's a systematic approach to implementing sustainability. It's repeatable, it's measurable, and the majority of designers and contractors in particularly the Australian infrastructure space really know what they're getting up for when they apply the tool. It demonstrates policy implementation. So for the public sector, it can help you achieve policy objectives by prioritising the relevant credits that align with your policies and internal sustainability commitments and embed those into your supply chain. And benchmark performance. You're able to see how you're performing against the broader market, but also on a project by project basis. So the key benefits, obviously, it drives sustainability outcomes. The IS rating tool just gives projects something to aim for, to visualise and map their trajectory and a way to achieve those outcomes. It's a comparative analysis, so you can compare your performance with similar bodies doing similar projects, as well as track your own internal performance. It delivers whole of life efficiencies. So this is obviously critical to asset owners, but making the right decisions during particularly planning and design will often set assets up significantly during their operational life cycle. So this tool really just encourages and rewards projects that consider the impacts throughout all phases of the project. Another point is collaboration. So collaboration between designers, contracts, proponents, it's really critical to the success of any project, and sustainability and embedding that in a project is no different. And lastly, it supports funding. So, it aligns reasonably well with the Infrastructure Australia and INSW frameworks. And really, it provides some of that assurance and integrity to ensure that, particularly with public spending, that you're getting the best bang for your buck and you're doing things that are right. So this is a slide that was a study that ISCA recently completed on the return of investment of the rating scheme. And what we found is that essentially a return of investment of at least $1.60 and sometimes as high as $2.40 for every dollar spent through the IS rating process. This is really just capturing some of the more tangible and quantifiable benefits in CO2 avoidance and things, materials and waste diversion from landfill. It doesn't really factor in any of the social or cultural outcomes for which our rating scheme places a huge focus on. Some of the case studies I'll talk through will help clarify maybe how some of this return of investment is being achieved. We've also recently published our impacts report, which starts to try to quantify and provide a bit of a snapshot of the holistic benefits achieved through the IS rating scheme. And as you can see, energy, we've had up to a 69% reduction on life cycle impacts, a 34% reduction in water for what is normally business as usual in projects, 11% materials reduction, significant energy reductions, potable water substitution, devoted significant volumes of waste from landfill. Currently we're achieving on average 96% of spoil reuse on our offsite. So some of these benefits really do, or some of the rating tool really does drive meaningful practical benefits on a project. Net zero's arguably never been as hot a topic as it is at the moment. And really what this is showing us is that, 15% of, our net zero and carbon emissions are really from materials and operation of infrastructure assets. And what the graph on the right shows you is that really the only area that you're going to have a meaningful impact is during the planning and the design phases of these projects. And that's what the IS rating tool really is just trying to encourage you to do. It's just to think of these things a little bit earlier, so you've got the most time to implement them and demonstrate change. So now I'll just give a quick overview of ISCA and what we basically do. So ISCA is a member-based, not-for-profit industry council, and we administer the IS rating scheme, which is a third-party, assured, voluntary, sustainable assessment framework. So within the industry, we have our 4 main strategic goals, and the first is obviously leadership, so to drive global best practice, and predominantly we do this through the IS rating scheme. The second is thriving industry. So our member-based network allows us to build industry capability to deliver positive, sustainable outcomes, through the provision of tools and resources, guidance. We do professional development and training. The third is market transformation and really advocacy for change and celebrating the wins to support market transformation is one of our biggest strengths. And lastly, organisational health. And I really sum this up in we need to ensure that we are practicing what we are preaching. Our impact is really a byproduct of our traction through mandating agencies. So we've currently got over 165 billion worth of infrastructure project assets that are registered for ratings, and we've probably got closer to 120 live ratings underway. As you can see on the right, it's a significant number of the primary infrastructure delivery organisations in the transport infrastructure space have mandated the application of IS ratings. And when you have a look at some of the CapExes that have been sort of the mandating thresholds, they're relatively low in the infrastructure delivery space, further demonstrating that there is real tangible benefits in applying the IS rating scheme, regardless of the project size. This all wouldn't be possible without our membership and value chain. It's arguably our biggest strength. And as you can see, it's the who's who of infrastructure planning, design and delivery and operations. It's basically every major transport proponent, a lot of the top tier contractors and multidisciplinary consultancy firms are our members. And what that allows is generally through the procurement exercises for infrastructure and IS ratings, a lot of the major players in the industry are well accustomed to our scheme and have actually got experience in delivering it. A recent study has found that the IS rating scheme is the most comprehensive and rigorous assessment process that infrastructure projects can go through internationally. And really that stems from the third-party assessment and third-party verification and accreditation process. So all project submissions are submitted with ISCA, but we actually contract out sustainability experts to undertake the assessment and verification process. And what this is showing us really is that Australia and Oceania is actually one of the highest performing regions in global infrastructure sustainability. It's really quickly becoming the norm. So the sooner that you're on board and up to speed with the IS rating and infrastructure sustainability, the better placed you will be to capitalise on what really is an exciting period moving forward. As I mentioned, one of the main benefits of sustainability assurance is really, I suppose, aligning just with what is the current expectation that infrastructure and public sector investment is delivered in a sustainable manner. I think 2020 has almost been a perfect case study in that. At the start of the summer, there was the Australian bushfires that, ravaged through places over the East Coast. And then through the back end of the year, we've been hit with a global pandemic. I don't think resilience, climate change or net zero have ever been as hot a topic as they are now. And all indicators are showing that this is just becoming the new norm. The infrastructure pipeline is looking sort of staggering at the moment, with the next 3 to 5 years showing a huge increase in infrastructure investment and spending across all of our main regions. What we're seeing is a substantial increase in infrastructure investment and registrations for IS rating schemes, with the back end of 2020 showing to be probably our busiest period since we've been operating. The New Zealand market is a new market that we're operating in as well, and it's experiencing equally as impressive growth projections in the infrastructure investment space. I just thought I'd pause there quickly to see if there was any questions before I go into a bit more detail in the IS rating scheme and delve into some case studies.
I think people can go off mute now. I've changed the settings. Just an FYI. If there's any questions.
Okay. Okay, I'll continue on. So hopefully now my sales pitch has sunk into a few, and it's the questions slowly shifting from what is sustainability insurance and ISCA to really what does it mean for us? What is it, and how do we get involved? So the IS rating scheme covers the whole of project lifecycle. We've got a planning rating, really for that options analysis initiation through up to sort of procurement phase. We then do a design and as-built rating, and the way that works is the design phase is an interim rating only, and then once the asset's constructed and you can demonstrate that all the commitments have been carried through, you get the final as-built rating. We also have an operations rating, which works slightly different to the planning, design and as-built ratings. It's a little bit more flexible and adaptable, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail shortly. We have 2 versions of the IS rating tool, and it's a bit of a common misconception out there that we've got version 1.1, version 1.2 and version 2.0. Currently, version 1.2 is where the majority of RS ratings are being undertaken against. And really, we'd still recommend this version of the rating tool for new clients, new rating partners, maybe the proponents and clients that are less mature in the sustainability infrastructure space. The new IS version 2.0 is a slightly more comprehensive scheme. However, it doesn't in any way mean that it's necessarily better than IS version 1.2, and that is something that I couldn't stress more. The majority of our projects are using version 1.2. It still is an extremely comprehensive technical manual, and the majority of it still delivers the same sustainable outcomes as version 2.0. The rating scheme covers all aspects of sustainability. So it basically includes all these categories that aim to capture quadruple bottom line metrics. We have 4 themes, so governance, economic, environmental and social, which then has 17 categories, which are the ones listed there. And underneath those, there's 46 individual credits. Each of these key themes aligns with the Global Sustainable Development Goals for best practice reporting on sustainable outcomes. And what this can enable, particularly sort of government delivery agencies, transport authorities, regulators, and even some of the operators or consultant teams, is to really demonstrate which of the sustainable development goals your project or asset is contributing to most. And really this allows you to align the targeted SDGs, if you will, with your internal policy or government commitments, as well as the project goals, and can really improve your internal and external reporting. I've had a quick look at the Sustainable Ports, a guide for port authorities, just snapshot on the PIANC website. And very quickly, you'll see that the key issues that are to be dealt with being environmental quality, soil, water, air and noise, habitat and integrity of ecosystems, energy efficiency, materials and wastes, climate change, stakeholder participation and cooperation with private sector very closely aligns with our key credits and themes. So there is a lot of synergies between the guide and documents that I believe PIANC is preparing and pushing, and the IS rating tool. The fundamental principle of the IS rating scheme is to push industry beyond compliance and beyond business as usual. So really benchmarking or compliance level 0, it's almost where the industry is currently at. And the way that I think of this is, think of Australian standards, your local council, policy or specifications or, development requirements. Really what this tool is helping you do is look at ways that you can go above and beyond compliance. And generally the credit levels follow a pretty similar sort of escalation or hierarchy, in that level 1 is often sort of measurement, baselining, outlining some targets. Level 2 is quite often showing that you're going above and beyond to ensure there's no recurring or net impact. And then quite often level 3 is actually about restorative action and enhancement. These are some of our credit examples, and basically each credit comes with a default weighting, and the IS rating tool process allows you to review those default weightings, or the importance, if you will, of the credit to your project scope, and actually tailor the IS rating tool. So basically what it does is it allows you to focus your organisation and the project team on the areas of sustainability that will have the most impact, or that are deemed most important from your key internal and external stakeholders. This basically just incentivises you and rewards you for taking actions in the areas deemed most important. So the way that I always look at that is, if there's high risk or lots of opportunities, generally you'll see the credit weighting that's quite high to actually reward you for spending time and effort in determining outcomes. This is just a really simple sort of catch of 2 credits. As you can see, E&E 1, which is from version 1.2, and it's basically a sliding scale that's looking about how you're implementing measures to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions compared to your business as usual. And so it's a sliding scale up to 30%. And so if you can demonstrate that you've reduced by over 30%, you'll get the full credit points in level 3. The one on the right is a typical sort of environmental compliance credit, and there are a number of areas that the rating scheme does overlap with environmental compliance. And I thought this was quite a relevant credit, being receiving water quality, in that it really is asking you to consider all of your project impacts and look for ways that you can actually demonstrate improvement in receiving water environments or values, or as the bare minimum, demonstrate that you're having no impact. Each credit, as I said, contains a number of points, and the total score for ISCA is out of 110 points, but that includes 10 points for innovations. And so under IS version 1.2, we have 3 basically rating awards, and that's commended is from 25 to 49 points, excellent from 50 to 74, and leading 75 plus. Similarly with IS version 2.0, we've added a few different breakups of the certification levels and rating levels, and they go in bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. As you'll see, projects that score less than 25 points in our rating scheme are invalid and not approved for a formal rating. And really, the key outputs that our rating tool is looking at, it's all about benefits realisation tracking. So, and across the entire project lifecycle, so the earlier that you're able to consider things in planning, and by considering the design, construction, and then the operation implications of each of those decisions, you're allowed to, much more clearly track the benefits that the project's delivering, and allows you to rationalise some of those decisions. It also gives you, unbelievable insights into some performance data and your impacts across some of those less tangible outcomes. There's huge focus on stakeholder and community elements in our rating schemes. And I think, as we all know, sometimes, it's the biggest opportunity to de-risk a project is by undertaking some of these consultation exercises earlier and, with a broader depth of stakeholders. And they're some of the requirements the tools really do sort of push and get projects to consider a little bit early on than maybe they normally would. As I've said, we've also got an IS operations rating, and we're starting to see a number of these piloting projects start to submit their verifications, and some of these results are starting to filter through. The IS operations manual is only under version 1.2 currently. The version 2 manual is underway, but it has the same categories and themes and the same scoring system essentially as the design and as-built or planning manuals. What it does do is it broadens its application a little bit. There's a lot more flexibility in the operating models that are being used for the operations of assets, as well as the extents. So whether you actually want to compartmentalise individual components of your operations, whether you want to look at the single asset, a network of assets, portfolios, programs, the operations tool has been designed to be sufficiently flexible to allow you to sort of tailor it as best to your operational requirements. It's got a much more flexible delivery approach. So there's a 1-year approach, you can do 3-year approaches. I think you can even do a 5-year sort of rating approach. And the way that it's built on is a lot more flexibility with regards to how it's assessed and verified. So we allow a lot more internal self-assessments and sort of interim verifications that are streamlined with maybe one verifier. And what this allows you to do is really more about establishing sort of baselines, ensuring that you're capturing the right data in the first couple of years, and then going through to get more sort of formal verification and certifications on your operational performance. Is that it's really about the value of measuring sustainability. So by benchmarking, undertaking comparative analysis, implementing continuous improvement measures, understanding your risk and opportunity space, detailing your efficiency gains, incorporating change, collaborating, and going through to improve service provision. It's a much more practical and efficient approach to IS rating schemes. So I think even the terminology and language has been simplified. It's focused much more on rewarding actual outcomes in resource use. There's significantly less evidence burden and an improved scorecard. And as I've said, it's a bit more of an audit style verification with a single verifier. We also have a 5-year rating validity, which I think is a critical element for operations in particular. If you're going through this process, you want to ensure that you can leverage any of the rating certification or any of the outcomes for as long as possible. It allows you to quantify your current operational sustainability across quadruple bottom line. It benchmarks your performance both internally and externally. It maximises your risk and opportunity management, and it allows you to integrate and prioritise sustainability initiatives into that current business practice. So really a cultural change and shift into sustainability. I thought I'd quickly pause again just to see if there was any questions on the IS rating scheme or ops scheme. I do have just a couple of slides of some case studies just to start to quantify some of the benefits that are realised through our scheme. But I do have lots more detail of the IS rating scheme nitty-gritty, so I'm more than welcome to take any questions if there are before I give a quick overview of some case studies.
Yeah, it's Mason from Cardinal. Thanks, Declan, for the presentation. I have two questions. The first one is that based on your experience, when is the best time for a designer to start working on the IS rating tool? It's better to say that the design IS rating tool. I'm not talking about the build. If I'm a designer, if I'm working for the consultants and start from the beginning, from the concept design, and I have to go through the project up to the end of the detail design, when is the best stage? When is the best timing to start thinking, to start working on the IS rating and sustainability? This is my first question, but I asked the second one after.
Okay, it is a really good question, and I mean, undoubtedly, the earlier you can start picking up the IS rating scheme and looking at it, and the earliest that you're thinking about sustainability, the better. So from my personal experience in planning projects, particularly in the port and marina space, if there's any chance of reusing dredge spoil, it's any chance of looking at some of those critical resource efficiency and materials efficiency elements, you really need to start looking at from day one, almost in project planning. We know that sometimes that dredge spoil might need years to sit and settle, and drain out before it's suitable to even be mixed or new fill, clean fill dumped on top, so it can be structurally sound. If that's not thought, well in advance of, probably starting design, that opportunity is probably going to be missed. So definitely early on. I think when it comes to, design and construct ratings, I'd always say that, I'd pick up the technical manual if you've got a copy of it at the time of tender almost, to make sure that firstly, any of those ISCA rating scheme requirements that are in the procurement process, you're reading the technical manual to understand what it's asking you to do. There are a few, key elements to the rating scheme and some of the credits that we do ask projects to demonstrate. And I think where most projects run at risk is following a sort of business as usual design process and trying to, backcast or apply their process to meet the technical manual requirements, instead of almost using the technical manual to help inform at least a little way of how you actually go about the designing, process and your value engineering process in particular. I think the industry, we forget how, just problem solving is in our nature. And I think you forget how often you shift a GIS or CAD file on a plan or a map because of opportunities and constraints. And really, I think the more that you're aware of capturing each of those changes as well throughout your design process, the better placed you are really to start demonstrating some of those initiatives in your rating submission.
Yep, thanks for that. The second question I have, that based on your experience and the projects that you have seen, which stakeholders should be more involved in this, the process of rating? We have different stakeholders, obviously, in our project, like project manager, like design team, that clients, also project manager, and etc. And definitely the community, sometimes, the councils, depends on the project. And who should be more involved besides who can help us to better proceed into this rating, into that IS rating? Which resources we have, which people we have in our industry, in our space, to help us?
Yeah, it's often the $1 million question. And one of the benefits of the rating scheme is, and it's probably stronger in version 2, is there is a bit of an overlap in the credits. And so what it does allow you to do, for instance, is if you're targeting stakeholder credits, in the preparation of your stakeholder engagement plan, you can detail which stakeholders are critical for which elements of the project, how you're going to consult with them, why it's appropriate, which forums you're going to use. And so I think just having a very well considered and targeted stakeholder engagement process is probably the most critical element. Who are involved? I mean, our rating scheme really tries to push the boundaries to encourage as many stakeholders as possible. So, internal stakeholders can be your design and construct teams, your design managers, you might have your technical, your lighting, your noise experts. Then you might move into community and stakeholder, internal representatives. You might want to bring in local councils, industry bodies, local businesses. As I said, it's really about undertaking assessment of the impacts of your project, the potential stakeholders that could be impacted, and then trying to at least factor in some level of consultation for all of them along the life cycle. Obviously, it can be an expensive process, so that's why making sure that it's targeted, it's fit for purpose is probably the key, my key takeout from what the rating scheme's trying to do. There's no right or wrong answer as who should be involved along the way. And I think that's something that probably isn't as well understood in the rating scheme, is there is discretion for projects to set some of those rules around who they want to bring in and when. And as long as that can be justified, genuinely, you'll have no problems in demonstrating that you've met the requirements of the technical manual.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other questions, or should I jump quickly into just a couple of case studies? Okay, I'll move along. So this is just a snapshot of some of our completed port and marina projects. We've also got a number that are currently underway, including the Ocean Reef Marina in Western Australia, Westport in Western Australia. We've got Port of Auckland doing an ops rating, and many others. As you can see, there's some pretty major port and marine developments that have, received accreditation under the IS rating scheme, and the scores that they've achieved and some of the, particularly innovations that have been pushed in the port marina space has been a real standout from me personally. So one of the case studies I do is the Victoria International Container Terminal. So it was developed as part of the Port Capacity project, and will basically reconfigure and redevelop Wed Dot, returning it to a international container facility. So it was a $550 million project. It was a port. They did a design and as-built rating. They managed to achieve a leading score, which was fantastic. And these are some of the key outcomes and highlights from their design rating. So they achieved a world-first innovation for their automated lashing platform that basically bridged the automation gap between the ship-to-shore cranes and horizontal transport machines. They got an Australian first for the incorporation of light emitting plasma lights into the port operations and port area. So this will be the first application of LED lights in an Australian port environment, where most others use sodium or LED lighting. This has obviously had significant benefits to some of the sensitive ecological receivers in the area. Traditionally, we focus on environmental and some of these more tangible water and energy savings, but really this project was, performed extremely well with some social initiatives. And some of those, they supported the disadvantaged, disabled and low income in the area through an affordable housing initiative. They partnered with a local high school to provide fee assistance and scholarships. They helped future generations become happy and resilient, basically through establishing a community investment fund in the area as well. And through the IS rating scheme and some of the more tangible benefits and outcomes, There's an estimated reduction in energy consumption by 26% and carbon emissions by 36%. And really, it's just by considering your options early in the planning and design phase that's allowed them to realise these outcomes. They're estimating a 24% water saving over the life cycle of the asset, which, when you look at it, is almost 470,000 litres of water. The 79% of terminal water use during operations will be from non-potable sources. And at the moment, they're demonstrating approximately a 50% reduction in material impacts from the project, which is equating to almost 35,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. Another project is the Moorebank Logistics Park. And when completed, it will basically move 1.5 million shipping containers annually by rail instead of road, which takes 2,700 heavy vehicles off Sydney roads each day and reduces greenhouse gas emissions by approximately 110,000 tonnes every year. And so this also achieved a world first in innovative technology due to its high degree of automation. So this included automated gantry cranes, straddle carriers, sortation systems, and terminal operating systems. And automation reduces energy use, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, it enhances safety, it minimises environmental impacts, it improves productivity and economic output. So really, one of those initiatives is hitting all pillars of sustainability. They received an Australian first for their approach to heat island effect. And what that's showing is it's probably going to result in a 4 degrees Celsius decrease in temperature on the project site compared to neighbouring sites and industrial areas in the area. They're also planning embodied energy within construction materials is expected to be halved through applying a slightly more efficient design and construction process. And so they're expecting savings of over 2 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent over the 40 years of operation. And that's expected to be a 77% reduction when compared to what the business as usual or current approach to delivering this project could have been. The project's also achieving 61% renewable energy substitution via a solar power precinct on site across their 243 hectare precinct. Another recent case study is the Auckland Airport project, and this is one of our operations beta tester projects. A lot of this, the key outcomes was looking more about how they can address some of their key risk areas in ecology, community participation and waste. And I think the key outcome or key tangible outcome that this project was able to demonstrate through their operations rating is they've been able to achieve a 79% reduction in average energy and water use per passenger that comes through that airport, which when you look at on the scale of 14.5 million passengers through the airport per annum is a significant outcome. I've also got a case study on the Bunbury Outer Ring Road project, which was the first IS version 2.0 planning rating. They basically targeted a bronze rating, but were able to achieve a silver rating. And really, this project has highlighted some key benefits of thinking about sustainable even early on in planning has resulted on the project. And there was no better example, I thought, than their energy example or outcome that they had on the project. And so project street lighting was estimated to contribute 50% of operational and maintenance emissions. That's excluding, obviously, your scope 3s from your vehicles. What they did is, because they were in the planning phase, they investigated essentially an alternative lighting strategy that was more aligned to what's done in Victoria. As we all know, deviating from specifications or sometimes trying just to do something that's not business as usual can be met with a lot of roadblocks and can often take a significantly longer amount of time to get approval to implement. By investigating these opportunities in the planning phase, they were able to basically get internal approval for this alternative lighting strategy and approach. And some of the savings on this project are staggering. So they'll save $3.5 million across the 7 interchanges, a saving of $35,000 per annum on operational costs, and that's just from the lighting alone, and saving 160 tonnes of CO2 per year. This has also resulted in a significant reduction in light pollution for residents in close proximity to the road. There's also a number of sensitive environment receivers, particularly fauna habitat, that are going to benefit substantially from the reduced light pollution. And so when you look at this in the context of an IS rating scheme, if on average maybe a design and as-built rating might cost $90,000 to $100,000 in ISCA fees, and if, say, it was $200,000 in consultant fees to manage that process internally for yourselves, after 10 years of operation, this project has probably paid for all of that just through this one lighting initiative that they've realised. So as I said, all it takes is you to identify a few minor little wins, a few initiatives, and the operational benefits can be substantial and really improve the performance of the asset, and then give you such a greater level of, I suppose, social responsibility and opportunities to promote those wins and promote those benefits, and particularly in regional projects or highly contentious projects, it's a really important marketing and stakeholder engagement tool. So that's it. I apologise, it was obviously lots of talking and pretty lengthy, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I hope you found some of it interesting and got some takeouts out of it. But if there's any questions more broadly, if you want me to go into any more detail or anything, please feel free to speak up.
Hi Declan, this is Bart from Rostar. I actually have a quick question.
Yep.
So with all those big projects, the initial initiative, does it usually come from, whether that's government or maybe Port Authority in our case? When does it usually, where does it initiate and at what stage of the project? I'm just trying to picture sort of step by step how it's all. It's very interesting. So yeah, if you can.
In what regard? Do you mean the actual sort of sustainability initiatives, or as in just the right rating scheme and when you apply it to a project?
When do you get involved, and where, which party is actually initiating? So asking you, for example, to get involved, and this we're gonna get you to support our project.
Yeah. So basically,
that was my question also too. It's an interesting question.
Okay, perfect. So basically, the IS rating scheme, once you've registered for a rating, you get a project manager assigned to the project. So if a project's in Western Australia, you'll automatically get me assigned to the project. And my job is essentially just to help walk you through the rating, just to be a point of contact. If you've got technical queries or need clarifications on any of the credits, I'm basically the conduit between yourselves and the IS rating scheme. And so the most common pathway we see is, as I said, a number of the transport agencies mandate us. So for instance, a main roads project over $100 million, that's going to get registered for an IS rating scheme. We just know that. And so sometimes we'll have the, sort of delivery agencies, the transport authorities, register rating agreements. Otherwise, we'll see them place the requirement to register for an IS rating in the procurement phase. So they'll pass that on to either the designers if it's a design only, or if it's a design and as built or an alliance, tender process, they'll quite often embed the requirement to register for an IS rating with the proponent teams. There's no right or wrong answer. As I said, the way the IS rating scheme works is as it transitions through from designers to contractors, all the information basically flows through. When it comes to my personal involvement, I'm basically happy to get involved from day one on the project if need be. And so what the normal process is, upon registering for a rating, we'll normally facilitate a kickoff with myself and at least the sustainability manager, maybe project manager or project director. Sometimes people will bring in, maybe a key enviro or some stakeholder reps into those meetings, and we'll basically have a kick-off just to talk about the project, determine the scope of the rating, and basically map out the process for implementation moving forward. We also offer planning support, which we can do on it's a bit of a consultancy fee basis, and that's really for projects that they may not justify going down a full planning rating, but they at least need some advice about how to scope their IS ratings. And typically that's really beneficial for program ratings, as we call them. So if you've got a number of work packages that are quite distinct and separate, for instance, you might have a roadworks package, but then part of that you might be building 3 bridges. And so what we can actually do is recommend a program rating through this planning support, where we'll say, get 1 rating over the bridge component, and bundle all the bridges into 1 rating, and then have the road as its own rating. And basically we can work out, based on capital value or importance of the project, almost a weighted average that reflects all the work packages. So they're all the support services that we offer, really, from initiation with ISCA. And then throughout the rating journey, as I said, I normally will have monthly meetings with projects as a minimum. I recommend, fortnightly meetings as you're getting into submission preparation. And then basically just I'm on call for any time queries arise throughout the process.
So the support, what I understand from also these case studies, that the main support should comes from the client. I mean that the main clients in different states, like Transport for New South Wales, like for instance NSW Ports, and etc., they should invest in the area of the sustainability and IS rating and using the ISCA tools. And then that the consultants, the contractors have that space, have that opportunity to engage with ISCA.
Yeah, and
right?
and as I said, it does differ, the delivery model, for every basically organisation that does lots of ratings with us. Sometimes will be the client or the delivery agency will be very hands-on with the rating, and particularly I see that when they've done lots of ratings, they've started to resource it, and they're becoming quite mature in our sustainability rating tool. Then there's also projects that prefer to basically consult and contract and I say handball, but de-risk the rating process from them internally, and they'll actually then place the emphasis on the designers and the contractors to deliver the IS rating. And from a contractual perspective, it is probably the least risky way to do it. And as I said, the beauty of a lot of our members being a lot of the major multinational sort of consultancy firms and a lot of the larger tier contractors is a lot of them have now had a lot of experience in delivering IS rating tools. So what we normally recommend is you at least have a sustainability, an accredited sustainability professional, so an ISAP resource. And I'd always say you have at least 1 full-time resource per project, generally managing your IS rating. It can be that intensive, and as long as I think either the design or contractor or the proponent is at least providing that 1 full-time, more or less, resource to coordinate all the various inputs, who takes central carriage of it is really not as critical then.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Declan. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions. Definitely, maybe try to slowly wrap it up, maybe with the last slide. We also have 3 minutes left, so. Yeah, all right, great. Thanks, Declan. So hi, everyone. This is Bart from Rosta here. Thank you, Declan, for the great presentation, and thank you as well to all participants for your time and your engagement. Thank you also to Mason Rath from Cardinal for helping with arranging this webinar. So just before we wrap up, I'll very quickly run through our events planned for the next year. Thanks, Declan. So, given the unprecedented circumstances, we will need to confirm the exact dates probably early next year. However, for the Q1, we will have the Cruise 2021 event. So this will be like a QA forum for the panel of industry representatives, aiming to tackle, the spectrum of all the questions around this topic. Obviously, the significant impact of pandemics, the lessons learned, the response, and also the future. So more details will be confirmed soon. Our target is to have around 100 or 200 people in person and another 100 joining on a virtual basis. So details on the date and time will follow. Later in Q1, probably in March, we will have another YP Sundowner event. Time and location will also be confirmed. It will most likely take place in Sydney CBD, and to accommodate approx 50 young professionals, hopefully we get that number. Just a reminder here as well that anyone at the age of 40 and less is very welcome to join Young Professionals group on LinkedIn. That's PIANC Young Professional, and it's a great way to find out about events as well as broaden your professional network. Early in Q2, we will have a Wave and Ocean Energy Forum. It will be like a review of the state of the industry, focusing on Australia and particularly on New South Wales. Then in Q2, we will be organizing a PIANC event for undergraduate students from Sydney universities. This is a new thing, particularly those students who associate their future with marine industry. So we are working on details at the moment, and again to be announced earlier next year. Then the annual technical conference together with COPEP, that's planned for Q3, initially planning to have around 100 people in person and another 100 virtually. And finally, we will have a very interesting technical tour around the Garden Island facilities. That will be around the new wharves and also the famous Captain Cook's dry dock. So that will be it for the moment. So please stay tuned for further details and dates. So also just for your information, this presentation has been recorded and will be available on PIANC YouTube channel. Thank you. Thanks everyone again for your time. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Declan.